Go ahead and call the committee to order. First item on the agenda today is a hearing on Senate Bill 321. Chris, can you give us an overview, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, Senate Bill 321 would designate bridges located on US 69 Highway and the 18th Street Expressway as the Representative Robert M. Tomlinson Memorial Bridge. So Section 1 provides that the Robert M. Tomlinson Memorial Bridge will be collectively designated on two bridges. And you can see in the bill and in my brief the bridge designations from KDOT. As always, highway signs won't be placed until Secretary of Transportation receives 100% of the cost of the signs and an additional 50% for any future replacement or maintenance. Bill becomes effective July 1, 2026, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, and I guess the amendments made on the Senate side were changing it from, it was originally a junction designation, and this changes it to the bridges, I think, from my understanding, for clarity and save a little bit on the cost of the signage. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Chris? Representative Van Helden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the geographic location, it is at the interchange there, though, 69 I-35.
Yeah, same location. Just I think again easier clarity for KDOT to know where to place them and not have to place like 6 signs rather than just on the two bridges.
So it's the bridge going over I-35.
Yes, correct.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a review of the fiscal note. So if you'll take a minute and look at the fiscal note, you'll notice fiscal note runs higher on these things because they're, no, because they're on interstates. And probably this was the original one as it was originally introduced, and it wasn't redone after they changed the location like Chris had talked about. All right, committee. Next, we'll talk about verbal proponents. The first proponent is Chris Courtright. Just so some of you newer people used to know, he was the original Eddie Pinner and used to guide us through all of our economic decisions through some very traumatic times. And thanks for your service, Chris, and go ahead.
Chairman, let me first say your staff has done its usual bang-up job describing the legislation for you. I am here today as a strong proponent of Senate Bill 321. As was explained to you, this legislation would memorialize the late, great Bob Tomlinson. One thing I learned working in this building for many decades is never to read your testimony word for word. I'm certainly not going to do that. I'm going to cherry pick a couple places from it. But you might look through there. There's some interesting things in there. Bob was such an interesting guy. Everybody who ever met him enjoyed his zest for life, I think. And he's one of these people that everybody's got a story. And we all keep learning more about Bob. I learned just today, one of my former college friends, a lobbyist of some renown with the Kansas Aviation Ag Association, in fact, knew Bob during his days at Boise State. And back to the Boise State days, Bob, of course, got his love for public policy at a very early age. And not long after his Boise State days, part of his very interesting political career involving interning in back-to-back years in the late 1970s, in 1 year for former Senate Minority Leader Anthony Hensley, and in the next year for U.S. Senator Bob Dole. So, you know, one of these things is not like the other, right? I knew Bob when he worked here in the building and liked him a lot. And I sat down a couple years ago. One of the things I do now in all my spare time is do some interviews with the Kansas Oral History Project. And one of the things that the Kansas Oral History Project people do is interview former, largely retired policymakers and other important Kansans. And we go over people's political careers and the famous people they knew and all the other things you would expect in an oral history. A lot of times those will take 45 minutes or an hour. And we film them and post them on the website and the whole 9 yards. Bob's lasted 2 hours and 23 minutes. Because once you got Bob Tomlinson telling old war stories about his days in the legislature, there was no stopping him. So I'd encourage you to look that up on the website, and there's a whole bunch of funny stories about Bob's time in the legislature, largely in the 1990s, and there was a time of great dynamic change here in this body and in state government in general, and a lot of that is covered in the oral history interview. And I would just again conclude, and look, Speaker Glasscock is here and all sorts of people with more polish than me. So I just want to conclude by saying the bottom line is that Bob was in fact a hugely significant figure in the modern era of Kansas politics. And I would very much urge your support of this legislation that names important infrastructure in Johnson County, where of course he hailed from, in his honor. And thank you, and I'd be happy to, at the appropriate time, stand for any questions.
Anybody got any questions for Chris? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. Next proponent is Chris Tomlinson. Christopher, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Francis and the members of the House Transportation Committee. Kansas bill, Senate 321, is a bill that has a profound meaning to my family. Robert, also known as Bob Tomlinson, is my father. I am his youngest son. My dad passed away on February 11, 2025, unexpectedly in his home. Truly one of the hardest moments of my life as of yet. The loss was immense to my family and to the state of Kansas. Including myself, many people looked up to him for comfort and guidance. He held many roles in his career, from a school teacher to a civil servant, from being a loving husband, father, and a grandfather. Each one of these roles I know he enjoyed beyond words can describe today. Growing up, I was lucky enough to listen to his stories about being able to help. Not only did he help his students find themselves, he truly inspired each one of them to reach for the stars. He had a way with his words that just made sense. No matter who you were, he could explain anything to you. Often, I was there as he gave speeches on the House floor or a lecture in his classroom. Even being young, when he spoke, I found myself understanding. Being young, I would also go with him on errands. This is where I truly got to know my dad. We would go to the bank or the post office and even an occasional political adventure. I would often watch him engage with Kansans where he would listen to what they needed, and this was truly awe-inspiring. He would ensure that what he was doing was everything in his power to be their voice. As I continued to grow, I began to understand the impact of those errands. Those errands taught me everything that I am today, and that is someone who is eager to help, eager to listen, and eager to do the right thing for someone that you may not even know. An art that truly takes skill. He further taught me to stand up for what I believe in and not to be afraid to let your voice be heard, and today is that day. During my grieving process of my dad's passing, many people shared wonderful stories about his life and how he inspired them. These were all wonderful stories, all of which I could document forever. Having the bridge at I-35, US 69, 18th Street Expressway is one way of documenting these stories. Some, as many travel through that busy interchange every day, some will remember how he inspired them. And for those that may not know, they might look him up and see who he was and the impact he had on the state of Kansas. By passing Senate Bill 321 not only means a tremendous amount to my family, but it also serves as a great reminder of what it means to be a Kansan. And for that, I stand for any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Christopher? Seeing none, thank you very much, Christopher. Next on the agenda, we have Philip Tomlinson. Welcome to the committee, Philip.
Thank you, Chairman Francis, members of the committee. First, let me start by saying, as a creature of the House, it is so much better to be on the House side than the Senate. Having been on the House side following my dad since he came in 1993 at the age of 2, I can say this as if I am one of you. You've heard already an outline about Bob's career and about what he meant as a family person, and I'm going to try as briefly as I can, because I could easily talk about my father and make you miss your 3:30 committee and probably break the midnight rule at the same time. I'll try to tie it into what it means to be a Kansan and how Bob represents that. A Kansan is somebody who loves their family, takes care of their neighbor, and makes everybody's life better. First of all, with the family man, you've heard plenty of testimony for that. I will bring it into his time as a teacher, as a special education teacher. He always knew how to teach everybody, including his 2 sons. One of the 2 of us, I'll let you gather which one it is, sometimes had to be taught at a bit of a louder volume than the other one. I don't know why it was me, but you know, it happens. Bob would also share all of our accomplishments with everybody on the members that he served with, whether it was in 1995 when he announced my brother Christopher's birth on the floor, or during a budget hearing when I called him on the floor to tell him I had gone to the bathroom myself, to which he promptly got up and told everybody in the chamber and said, "At least something is moving in the state today." Bob cared for his neighbors. This intersection, if you're not too familiar with Johnson County, the Roland Park and the small cities in northeast Johnson County sort of sit there and sort of get lost to your Olathes, your Lenexes, your Shawnees. And it is crucial for the commerce of those cities to have a exit or the name of the city off of a major exit. When Bob came into the House in 1993 off of I-35, Roland Park did not have a name, but by the time he left, he had advocated for his district and worked with KDOT to get Roland Park on there. The neighbors that we grew up around always came to Bob for problems, and he would always fix them. They also were very forgiving, especially when Bob left me at a baseball game when I was 12. Bob made life better for everyone, and this is something that I try to embody and something I try to do. He wasn't just in Johnson County. He would go out to Scott City. He would go out to McPherson. He would go out to Liberal, Kansas, Wichita. He would know what your district needed, and he would work with you, no matter your ideology, your beliefs, would work with you to make sure that your constituents back home were taken care of. And as I get ready to finish, that's what a true Kansan is. Somebody who embodies those 3 things of caring for their family, neighbors, and making everybody's life better. So as my friend Ryan Peterson said in the Senate, this is not just a memorial for a fallen representative, fallen father. This is letting Kansans know that we look out for our own, and those who embody what it means to be a Kansan are always remembered, always thought of. And now I will stand for any questions, and hopefully somebody has something.
Thank you, Philip. Does anybody have any questions for Philip? Representative Collins.
Okay, I was wondering when that announcement was made that you'd use the restroom by yourself, how old were you at the time?
14. I think the speaker's right. Sometimes yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, what type of budget would it have been? Would it have been the 94 budget or something? Who knows?
Well, I just had to give you a hard time about that.
Yeah,
Thank you,
no,
Mr. Chair.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Brunk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a question, just an observation. I was here in a previous time from 2003 up until mid-2000. I knew your dad, and we got along great, and a lot of memories. Everything that you're saying about him is absolutely true. He had a great sense of humor, and just loved being around him. So appreciate your being here today. Thank you.
Representative Wilborn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here, family. I enjoyed Bob, like I said on the floor today. I met him when I was a lobbyist in the 90s, and he was on the insurance committee, later speaker, and later assistant insurance commissioner. As a lobbyist for the insurance industry, I found him to be extremely insightful, sympathetic, but don't try to pull a fast one over him. He'll throw a fastball right back at you. But a wonderful man, and I think you have all attested to that very fact. Thank you for being here.
Okay. Any other comments? Right? Yeah, Philip?
To respond to Representative Wilburn's thing, it was his changeup you had to watch out for. And if you, by chance, hit one of his changeups out, and I know this firsthand, if you hit one of his changeups that he threw, the next one would be coming in your teeth. Don't ask me how I know that.
All right. And the next proponent is former Speaker of the House, Representative Kent Glasscock. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Okay, now, they are handing stuff out face down. Do not peek until I'm done speaking. All right. Sworn oath, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of Senate Bill 321. For 10 years, I had the honor of serving alongside Bob Thompson in Kansas House. More than a colleague, Bob was my friend. He was the ideal public service in my mind. Leading with integrity, serving with passion and compassion, and leaving a lasting mark on those who touched him. Bob was a leader in the finest sense. He was eloquent, as has been alluded to, and had a masterful command of the English language. When he spoke, you listened, not only because of what he said, but how he said it. The movement of his arms and hands while speaking was pure art, an extension of his intellect and passion that made his remarks to the House chamber lessons in persuasion and performance. He had a gift for stating the obvious in a way that made you see it differently. His mind was legislatively brilliant, and his memory stored details of policies, bills, and the people behind them. Bob Tomlinson was the best vote counter in the history of the planet Earth. He knew each one of the 125 members with whom he served, what mattered to them and what mattered to their constituencies. People told Bob all kinds of things. And it was just amazing. And one day I asked him, Bob, why do people tell you all this stuff? And he looked at me like I was the biggest buffoon ever born. And he said, I asked them. I go, well, he did. And man, they told him everything. So during my years of service, he was one of my most trusted legislative colleagues. He was smart, he was funny, and he was able to intensely debate on the floor of the House a bill 1 minute and don those plastic black glasses with plastic nose the next. And he was equally comfortable either way. Rick, you're shaking your head, yes. I mean, he was just that way. Yeah. My time as speaker was a tumultuous time. We had the economic upheaval of the dot-com bust and the shock of 9/11. It was a tumultuous time. The economic impact devastated state budget with the worst revenue in decades. The stress of those years was palpable. It didn't seem to bother Brother Bob. On one particularly stressful day, Bob wandered into the speaker's office, looked at me and said, "I now know what your legislative career goal is." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "To have served without never reading a bill all the way through to the end." He then looked out the window and casually walked out the door, again without a care in the world. I won't tell you if he was right, but you might guess. Bob Thompson was one of the most remarkable people I've ever known. He is unforgettable. His friendship to me was a joy, his wisdom profound, and his public service truly remarkable. Please honor him with this interchange designation. Thank you, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman.
Does anybody have any questions for Speaker Glasscock? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your service, sir. All right, do we have any other proponent testimony that would like to speak to the committee? Okay, seeing none, I would direct the committee's attention. Oh, you want to do that?
Turn over your papers.
You'll have to give that one to Will. Okay. All right, thank you very much. All right, there's no further proponent testimony. I'll direct your attention to the written proponents, some of which include former Lieutenant Governor and Representative Troy Finley and former Majority Leader Gene Vickery. Do we have any opponent testimony? Seeing none, do we have any neutral testimony? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the hearing on SB 321. All right, next on the agenda, committee, we'll have a hearing on House Bill 2792. Chris, could you please give us an overview?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee House Bill 2792 would prohibit all drivers from using a mobile telephone while driving a vehicle through a school zone or road construction zone. The bill would, so that's the kind of the general prohibition in the bill, and then there are some exceptions I'll go through. So there would be an exception for using a mobile device by a law enforcement officer or emergency service personnel acting within the scope of the person's employment and duties. There's an exception for a person operating a motor vehicle that's halted at a location where the vehicle can safely and lawfully remain stationary, or using a mobile telephone that's being used with a hands-free device, which is a defined term as part of the bill. Additionally, individuals would also be allowed to use a mobile telephone to report current or ongoing illegal activity to a law enforcement agency, prevent imminent injury to person or property, summon medical or other emergency assistance, or relay information between transit or for-hire operator and the operator's dispatcher if the device is permanently fixed to the motor vehicle. Going on to section or subsection D, it says that holding a mobile telephone while operating a motor vehicle in a school zone or road construction zone would constitute a rebuttable presumption of a violation of the section. So rebuttable presumption basically means the court accepts a fact as true unless the evidence proves otherwise. So in this case, if a person's holding a phone in one of these zones, then it's the burden shifted to the person to prove that they weren't using it or they were using it for one of these exceptions rather than the prosecutor or law enforcement or whoever having to prove that they were using it. So the bill would make a violation of the new provision here a $60 traffic citation. And moving on to subsection E, the bill puts in requirements for law enforcement officers that are handling mobile telephones through enforcement of this new section. Law enforcement officers shall not, without the consent of the person, confiscate a phone for the purpose of determining a violation of the section, confiscate a mobile telephone and retain it as evidence pending trial for a violation of the section, or extract or otherwise download information from a mobile telephone for violations of the section unless there's probable cause that the phone was used in commission of a crime or the information is extracted or otherwise downloaded under a valid search warrant or as otherwise authorized by law. I'm just going to go into the definitions a little bit. The definitions on page 2 of the bill in subsection F would define what using a mobile telephone means. So it's operating a motor vehicle using a phone without the use of a hands-free device. This definition would not apply to any use of the device for voice-based communications, talk to text sort of thing, navigation or GPS purposes, or performing any entertainment functions that would otherwise be allowed to be performed on the vehicle's entertainment system if all of those actions were being completed in hands-free mode. So if enacted, the bill would become effective July 1, 2026, but the bill requires law enforcement to give a warning citation to a driver who violates these new provisions until July 1, 2027. With that, I'd be happy to answer your questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Chris? Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 2, looking at line 24, it's labeled B. I don't know if that's still section 1 or 2, but does not apply to. You've got voice-based communication is automatically converted to a device to be sent as a message in written form. So is this telling me does it mean the voice communication is illegal, but if I'm converting it to texting, the texting is okay?
It's, Mr. Chairman, Representative, so it's saying, first, it's the definition that says means using the phone when performed without the use of a hands-free device. And it just says that definition will not apply to a situation where, you're using the phone voicing a message that gets converted to a text message, and you're doing that through hands-free mode.
Through hands-free mode, and if I may continue, Chairman,
Sure.
It goes on the very next sentence, starting on 28, about GPS usage. So it does not apply to GPS usage. Is that a correct statement?
If you're doing that action in hands-free mode also. All three of those kind of exceptions to that general definition are required to be done in hands-free mode.
So then I go back around page 1, line 29, where you talked about the rebuttal. I think that was where it was at. Yeah, the rebuttable. So if I'm using it for GPS mode, so I guess it's a rebuttable presumption. I'm not using it for voice communications, but then by the time an officer pulls you over and stops you, how do you prove, I was using it for GPS and I wasn't talking to somebody or sending a text message, what apparently is okay on this one?
And that's what it would be up to you to prove. Like the fact is established that if you're holding it at any time in one of these zones, you're violating the section. If you can prove that you were doing some action in hands-free mode, then you would present that to the court at the appropriate time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other questions for Chris? Representative O'Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is, say for instance, an Uber driver is pretty much in one of these zones and gets an alert about another task or another job, you know, sometimes you have to click on accept or not accept. If they are in this zone and they actually operate it, are they in violation of this law?
Mr. Chairman, members, I do think it'd be in the discretion of law enforcement if they would think that's holding. I don't think that would be holding the phone necessarily. You aren't performing that action in hands-free mode.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they do.
Yeah.
So if they're in the school zone or construction zone, getting another, you know, offer, gig, you know, for another pickup. And if they operate, if say, for instance, they do actually, you know, in communication with their phone, are they in violation of this particular, will they be in violation if that's what I'm trying to get at?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I think the answer is that they could be, yeah, because I wouldn't say, we refer to like Uber and Lyft drivers as transportation network company drivers. They aren't specifically exempted as any part of these general exceptions in the bill. So unless they could prove that they were performing that action somehow in hands-free mode, then I think they could get an infraction in that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Other questions for Chris? Seeing none, thank you very much. And this is a bill that is also going through the Senate at this time, but on our bill, we don't have a copy of the fiscal note at this time. So we'll move on to the next proponent, and that would be Lieutenant Roy Wise with the Kansas Highway Patrol. Welcome to the committee, Roy.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Roy Wise, and I'm a lieutenant with the Kansas Highway Patrol's Public and Governmental Affairs Unit. First, to just maybe address the couple of questions we had heard previously, Representative Delperdang had asked about the use of hands-free devices. So within the bill, it actually defines hand-free devices to include speaker phones. So if you wanted to use your device to make a call or something like that within these zones, that's perfectly fine. You just can't use it while holding your phone. The other question that was asked had to do with an Uber driver that would maybe tap their screen to accept a ride. So some things to think about: the difference between touching the screen once versus holding the phone. We'd have to actually, as law enforcement, see that person holding the phone in the first place. That would give us reasonable suspicion to stop that person. That's going to be a very quick maneuver to touch that screen once versus holding a phone. There's also officer discretion involved. So if we were to stop that individual and they say, I'm an Uber driver, here's the situation, then we could address that roadside and more likely than not issue that person either a warning or just let them go on their way. And also one thing that I just want to emphasize before I go through my testimony is that this bill really only applies to these very narrow zones and circumstances. So we're just talking about construction zones when workers are present and school zones when the reduced speed is enforced. And those are the times when school children are coming and going to the school. So it's very narrowly focused to those certain circumstances. So as I said, I'm Roy Wise. I'm here with the Highway Patrol on behalf of them to testify in support of House Bill 2792. House Bill 2792 prohibits drivers from using a cell phone unless used hands-free when in a school zone, when reduced speed limits are enforced, or a construction zone when workers are present. Using a cell phone while driving is distracting and prevents the driver from using both hands to operate their vehicle. By requiring drivers to use their cell phones hands-free or not at all, they can remain more focused on the road and on others. We believe this is especially important in those school zones and construction zones. House Bill 2792 is also important because it addresses problems with existing texting and driving law found in KSA 815,111. Existing law can be problematic for law enforcement for two reasons. First, current law prohibits drivers from writing, sending, or reading written communication on a wireless communication device while driving. A driver who appears to be using their phones for these purposes could be stopped by law enforcement. However, the driver may tell an officer they were merely dialing a phone number, changing their music. The statement from the driver, regardless of its truthfulness, makes it difficult for law enforcement to obtain the level of proof needed to issue a citation. House Bill 2792 addresses that problem by clarifying that sufficient evidence for a citation is obtained when a driver is observed holding a cell phone while operating a motor vehicle in these very specific zones, barring certain exceptions that we've already discussed found in the bill. The second problem is that existing texting and driving law doesn't explicitly prohibit playing games, taking selfies, or other forms of distracting actions on a phone while driving. These activities are arguably just as dangerous, if not more so, than texting while driving, yet they're currently not prohibited. House Bill 2792 would address these behaviors and more by requiring drivers to either not use their phone or use their phone hands-free. While the bill's provisions are limited to active school zones or construction zones when workers are present, we believe House Bill 2792 is a step in the right direction. We also appreciate that the bill includes a provision to warn drivers of this new enforcement for a reasonable period of time, as it aligns with our efforts to avoid punitive measures and instead educate drivers about the hazards of distracted driving. In conclusion, the Kansas Highway Patrol earnestly supports House Bill 2792. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, for their consideration of our testimony, and we urge your support of the bill. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
I do want to clear something up before we start questions. The fiscal note is on the file. I was trying to speak and listen and read my cell phone at the same time, and I think that just shows how good we are at some of that stuff. So the fiscal note is in there, and it's a negligible. It's hard for them to estimate what the fiscal note would be. With that, yeah, do we have questions for Lieutenant Wise? Representative Delperdang.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Would you have any statistics of accidents or wrecks, et cetera, school zones, construction zones that were a direct result of cell phone usage?
Mr. Chair, thank you, Representative, for that question. That's a great one. I think KDOT has some statistics for us that talk about the dangers of distracted driving. I don't have any specific statistics as it relates to those specific zones, but I'd be happy to get that information and provide that to the committee at a later point.
Chair, if I may, to possibly the revisor, as the lieutenant mentioned, and I think it shows up here also, but construction zones when people are present, but it goes down and references, I believe it's KSA 8-1560A. Is it called out, workers must be present for it to be a construction zone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, the definition of road construction zone means portions of a highway which is identified by posted or moving signs as being a construction or maintenance work area. The zone starts at the first sign identifying the zone and continues until a posted or moving sign indicates the road construction zone has ended. There's no requirement that workers are present in that definition.
Anything else?
Follow up. So it's not in that statute, but it is. Let's see. Define. And I may have given you the wrong one. 8-1458A and amendments there too, while workers are present. So is that a stipulation we're putting in this, or is it in another statute already?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, sorry, I should have included that. So it's not in the definition. That's why it's stipulated in this bill for this violation, that workers are present.
And that's one of the things. This bill is designed very narrowly constructed. So we're really trying to make sure that we're protecting people when they're most at risk, you know, rather than just something a little more open. Other questions for Lieutenant Wise? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next proponent testimony we have is Travis Lowe with AAA of Kansas. You know, I always struggle with that. I know I'm Mark Lau, and you're probably related to him somehow. You just don't say it the same way.
That is possible. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Travis Lowe here from the Braden Heidner Lowe & Associates firm representing AAA Kansas. AAA Kansas serves over 350,000 Kansans across the state. And on behalf of AAA, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to support this legislation that we believe will improve roadside safety, in particular near vulnerable bystanders. You'll hear a lot about this afternoon. House Bill 2792, as was described previously, prohibits the handheld use of cell phones for all drivers driving when just in two specific scenarios, in a school zone during those designated hours and the construction zones when workers are present. For the veterans of this committee, this is not an unfamiliar issue. In fact, you gave the green light to legislation 2 years ago, very similar to this measure that was ultimately passed on the House floor with 102 votes. AAA has worked with a large group of stakeholders, all of which are in this room. And what this is to produce what we do call a limited hands-free bill. As the chairman mentioned earlier, it is narrowly focused. It does not pertain to a driver's age as seen in previous versions. So over the last 3 years, we've agreed there's a need for this bill, and that is to reduce the amount of distracted driving we have on our Kansas roads. You'll hear more from the Department of Transportation and the Contractors Association about some of the statistics and what that looks like statewide and in these specific scenarios. Overall, though, about 1 in 4 of our crashes in Kansas are related to distracted driving, and multiple sources cite us being the 7th worst state in the union as it pertains to distracted driving. So we do see this as a problem, and this is a solution, albeit not comprehensive, but hopefully to start to curb this in a better direction. We do understand distracted driving is a very loaded term, but we would wager that handheld phone use is a large contributor. And if you are driving down Interstate 70 or 35 or 335, what have you, you've probably seen examples when you pass a car or a car passes you when the driver's driving completely distracted, and it's just good luck at that moment that there hasn't been an accident. So let's speak specifically about the approach of House Bill 2792. And we want to be clear and make sure we answer these questions early. When we refer to handheld usage, we're talking about holding the phone with your hand physically. There are several different exceptions in this bill that try to clarify this is not talking about when your phone is sitting in a console and speakerphone. This is not it does not include when your phone is in some type of Bluetooth mode on Apple CarPlay or any of those types of situations, even on speakerphone sitting in your lap. This is about the handheld usage so that you have quick response times to be able to hold that steering wheel and drive in a safe manner. So in the two different scenarios, the first scenario are the school zones. We're talking about only designated posted hours. That's usually marked by flashing signs. They're certainly always marked when you enter and exit a school zone and with those respective hours of operations are. It's usually a couple hours, hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half after in the afternoon. So cumulative, we're looking at 2 to 3 hours throughout the day. When it's not in those designated hours, normal rules apply. But we still think not driving with the phone in those areas are a good idea. That is not pertaining to this bill. This would not apply to college campuses. This would not apply to being parked on the side of the road. You know, if mom or dad are on the phone trying to find Junior or Sally, that is not part of this. Is driving physically down the road in those school zones when the kids are running around trying to find their ride. The second scenario, and you'll hear much more about this later when the Contractors Association testifies, this is the road construction zones only when workers are present. Construction zones are clearly marked. There's cones, there's equipment, there's rerouting of lanes, barriers, all types of different obstacles. We need our drivers to be alert and certainly not trying to multitask while they hold a phone in their hand. How we arrive back here at House Bill 2792, the majority of states in the country already have a full statewide ban. Again, we're talking about a very narrow approach. Most states in the union already have a full ban that you cannot use your phone at any scenario. Most recently, Missouri has adopted that. 2 years ago, Colorado has that. States like Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas have the construction school zone language that is before you today. As we mentioned earlier, we're just one part of a large group of stakeholders that helped craft this bill. A lot of different eyes checking definitions. We worked with auto manufacturers to make sure this doesn't impede the hands-free technology that we know is evolving. We've worked with telecom groups on that same vein as well. Importantly, this does not supersede local governments. So if a local government like the city of Manhattan, as an example, that has something more restrictive, this does not supersede that. That gets to reign. This is just a base minimum layer that will reign across the state. We do have a number of exemptions that are detailed for emergency calls, law enforcement, and using two-way radios. as the highway patrolman mentioned, there is the warning place, which we do believe education is paramount for this bill, this issue. And there's a full 1-year warning period that is located on page 2, lines 33, to educate drivers. As is mentioned also in some of the earlier questions, we added some additional language as we discussed this with your Senate counterparts on the other side of the rotunda. It actually defines the word use on page 2, line 24. That was referenced earlier. All this does is what we believe is trying to provide extra clarity of what we're talking about. We're talking about the handheld use of a phone. This does not pertain in speakerphone mode. It does not pertain if you're doing voice texting through Apple CarPlay or Google CarPlay or anything like that. We're talking about the handheld use. We recognize that this is a loaded topic. Again, we recognize there's tons of different ways that one can be distracted in driving, just thinking about the day, whatever bill hearing you may have. Ultimately, we really ask the committee respectfully, and your counterparts in the Senate and the whole legislature in general, is to really consider the why of this bill. We are talking about 2 scenarios in extremely high risk. We have people standing by the road, putting themselves in harm's way to modernize and expand our highway system. And then we have a situation where the children are walking to their school to find their parents or their guardian, their daycare center, what have you. We just don't think we need to find ways to justify to hold your phone in a hand when we're driving those 2 scenarios. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions or yield for the next conferee.
Does anybody have any questions for Travis? Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lowe. So for definition of use in line 24, was there a recommended amendment for that, or you were just noting that it would be present in the Senate version?
Yeah, thank you, Representative Vaughn. So actually, we believe, the proponents believe on page 1, when we say this bill shall not apply to on line 12, when it talks about on line 18, a mobile phone that is being used a hands-free device, we actually believe, as this was drafted over the last couple of years, that is sufficiently clear. We had, though, felt the need to nail that down even further. And so, yes, use the phone, we added that language already in there. So that is an enhancement to this bill that was not in the bill 2 years ago when y'all voted out of this committee.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions? Representative Minix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your presentation. Something you mentioned during that, though, sparked something to me. We do school zones when kids are walking to and from school. I've always thought that was a little bit false in the attitude. If a young Philip is kept after school and Bob has to go pick him up 2 hours later, or there's activities at a school area later on, I think we as humans are somewhat accustomed to habit. And if an actual school zone is good at 7:30 in the morning, why shouldn't it be at 6 o'clock at night? Sometimes we have activities, sometimes we don't, but it always seemed to me to err on the side of safety. I know that's a little added to this bill, but would you discuss that a little bit?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Representative Minix. Yes, absolutely. My understanding or my assumption would be that setting those posted hours would be under the purview of the local school or the local school district. If that was broadened to encompass larger times where there could be foot traffic, that would fall under the purview of the bill, and we think that'd be a good idea.
Representative Reed and Jim. Representative Delperdane.
Just, and I understand and respect trying to keep the scope narrow. I've got no issue with that, and I will support this. But any thoughts, and maybe it's not a proper question to you, but the previous speaker there, when we have emergency vehicles present alongside the road, lights flashing, people present, should the same rules apply at that point in time?
Related to hands-free driving?
Either hand, but no cell phone usage.
That's an interesting concept. Short answer, that would be the best way to drive undistracted. we know last year, many of the folks in the same coalition spearheaded the legislation that y'all graciously approved last year to what we call the Move Over for Disabled Vehicles legislation. So we can have that type of due caution when we proceed to those types of disabled vehicles, which, you know, the law already included law enforcement officer vehicles and utility vehicles and such. In general, we think that's a good idea. Right now, we're just trying to keep this thing so narrow, unfortunately, because we're just trying to do our diligence to make sure we're educating. At the end of the day, this is about education, and hopefully people will learn and train to stop driving with their phone usage in their hand.
No, I respect that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Brunk.
Thank you. On the first page, you say that there's 15,000 accidents that had occurred through some kind of inattention. Do you know, and this doesn't have anything to do with the passage. I assume you're going to get pretty general acceptance here in the committee. Do you know how many of those are in a school zone or a construction zone out of that 15,000?
Our testimony referenced the 15,000 wrecks that are due to distracted driving. My understanding, representatives at the Department of Transportation and the Contractors Association have detailed charts, tables in their testimony. I think they might be able to better.
Charts that are coming, okay.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next proponent is Catherine Magana with Kansas Department of Transportation. Welcome to the committee, Catherine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Catherine Magana. I'm the legislative liaison for the Kansas Department of Transportation, and I'm here today to provide testimony in support of HB 2792 and hopefully clarify maybe some of the questions previous conferees. KDOT supports this bill as it is a piece of safety legislation for the traveling public and those that work on our roadways. As we've discussed, we believe that driving requires your full attention, and anything that distracts or takes away from that makes the road more unsafe for you as the driver and those around you. Eliminating handheld use of mobile phones while driving in school and construction zones would increase safety. First, school zones are unique because it brings motor vehicles and children or those on foot into very close proximity and requires drivers to give their full and undivided attention to driving. It is similar for road construction zones, which also bring workers on our roadways closer together with motor vehicle traffic. Like Travis said, many road construction zones include non-traditional lane maneuvers or traffic devices, as well as detours, possible flagger operations. So the potential for any one or combination of those factors requires a driver to be fully focused, and if not, decreases safety of both the workers and other vehicles. Distracted driving also puts the safety of KDOT's workers on our roadways, as well as the safety of our contractors' road workers at risk. I want to touch a little bit on some of the data that we've talked about earlier. So in 2024 in Kansas, there were almost 14,000 distracted driving related crashes, which resulted in 71 fatalities and 454 serious injuries. And to touch on what Representative Minix had asked about, it is not currently possible for us to identify school zone and construction zone locations without going through all of the officer narratives on all of those crashes. So with our current system, it's not possible. However, we can always pick out specific anecdotes. Of those injured in crashes in 2024, approximately 1 in 4 were killed or suffered a life-altering injury. And in 2023, nationwide, there were 3,000 crashes involving distraction, which is 8% of all fatal crashes that year and 8% of all total fatalities. However, in Kansas, the numbers are worse. 21% of fatal crashes involved distraction, and 23% of fatalities were caused by crashes involving distraction. This puts us significantly higher than the national average in 2023. We've discussed education efforts a little bit already, but if HB 2792 is enacted, KDOT would develop and conduct an educational campaign alerting drivers of this life-saving law change. KDOT does this for all new safety law changes to help educate citizens traveling on our roadways as part of our ongoing safety education efforts. This bill and its education efforts would work to change driver behavior. The agency respectfully requests that the committee support passage of this bill. We appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony and are happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Catherine? Catherine, I've got one. All right. So you've got this chart on the back of your testimony, and it says total distracted driving related crashes, 13,837. And then below, It said, oh, okay, total crashes. So 13,000 of the 61,000 were distracted. Okay. Right. Got it. Okay, thank you. Any other questions other than the one that can't read a graph or a chart? Okay, thank you very much. Next proponent testimony is Michael White with Kansas Contractors Association. Welcome to the committee, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Michael White, Executive Director of the Kansas Contractors Association, stand in strong support of this bill. And I want to first say that, as you guys know, you passed a bill earlier this session on construction vehicle lighting to update those light colors that we can use in construction zones. And that's one of two efforts that we're making this year on construction zone improvements and safety for our, not just our workers. I think it's lost on people that this is also a safety measure for the traveling public as they maneuver through these construction zones. And so this is an effort, my membership, you know, I talk to my members all the time about how close calls they get on in these types of situations. Remember, I always try to remind people that construction workers are usually looking down at the work they're doing. They're not paying attention to the traveling public as much as they would probably like to. And so their inattentive because they're working puts them in jeopardy. And the other thing I want to remind folks is, you know, this is work that we're doing on behalf of the state of Kansas, on behalf of our local counties and our local cities. And so we're really doing the work for the state, and we want to keep those people as safe as we can. I don't have a member that doesn't wake up every day, send their employees out into the workforce in construction zones, that their number one goal when they start that day is that every one of them gets to go home to their families. And that's the thing we always have to keep reminding ourselves, that these are people that go home to a family every night. They don't have the luxuries of working in a controlled environment. And so to the extent that we can control it for them, we want to do that. I see this more than anything as an education measure. Obviously, after the first year, a driver can be ticketed if they're holding the phone up. But honestly, we think that we owe it to not only construction zones, but school zones, just to educate the public about the distractions that causes when you're holding your cell phone. Representative Brunk, I would point you, in the back of my testimony is actually work zone crash statistics that KDOT has. This is not necessarily, I don't think, distracted driving per se, but you can see the contributing circumstances there. There's just a lot more distractions today on the roadways, predominantly around the cell phone. So I will say, and a little bit to Representative Delperdang's question, we are very much open to an amendment on this bill. I believe Chris has an amendment prepared at such time that you decide to work the bill, Mr. Chairman. We are open to the idea of having a sign at the beginning of the work zones that would indicate to a driver that this is a cell phone free zone in terms of your hands, and that workers are present. And it would be the duty of the contractor every day to make sure that when their workers are present in the work zone, that they make sure that that sign is in some way indicating that. And if they're not there working that day, that sign would just probably say road construction ahead, or, you know, work zone ahead, or something like that. You guys see that probably traveling around. You can flip signs and do things with signage to indicate that workers are present. We are very much open to that amendment, and that is available to the committee to work this. I will say this is a balance. This bill before you today, we've had a lot of discussion with the Senate about this bill. We've worked through a lot of language with the Senate. This is a balance we're trying to find on this measure. You guys and gals in the Kansas House of Representatives have passed this bill multiple times. We appreciate that support. We are now trying to find a measure with the language that we can get through this entire legislature to make this become law. This is a balance. We are going to ask the Senate to include the same signage language on the Senate side. And the other thing I would absolutely welcome, if this committee so desires, because it's a priority of our association and to keep construction workers safe, we are absolutely open, if this committee so desires, to put our lighting bill 2522 and the language of that language into this bill and marry the two bills up. We're absolutely open to that idea. And if that is the desire of this committee, I would just ask for one very small amendment. Again, Chris has this. The House amendment that was offered on the House floor that put in the word roadway in the bill, we would just ask that that be struck and put highway into that. We replace the word roadway with highway from 2522. With that, Mr. Chairman, I just appreciate all the support of this committee as you guys have worked diligently over the years to make these zones much safer. I can't tell you how much it is not lost on the construction industry of Kansas, how much this committee has supported these ideas, and I would stand for questions at the appropriate time.
And Michael, I just want to personally say thank you because I know you continue to work with stakeholders on this issue. And I know you guys have gave up a lot of ground on where you started out with on some of these measures to try to find something that can make it through the process. For those of you that wish there was more, you know, it gets more and more difficult to pass. But I just want to thank you for your willingness to compromise throughout this. Any questions for Mr. White? Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back when they were doing the expansion and widening project for Kellogg down through the main drag through Wichita, I know I seen construction signs that said no cell phone usage, et cetera. So have those been in place before, but just not statutorily?
Great question, Representative. I would say, without knowing for sure, I would say that that might have been potentially a local. I don't know the specific, but it could have been something local for that project or something. I don't know. We'd have to look into that a little further. It is not uncommon in states that have a prohibition of cell phone use in these types of situations that there is a notification at the start of a zone to notify to the public that it's a hands-free zone. So they know.
No, I like that. And if I could just throw a comment out, reading the bill, these things have GPSs in them, correct? It would be such an easy fix to this problem overall, not just construction workers, but the crashes in general. Have it set up mandatorily that over speed 30 mile an hour or so, it shuts off texting functions and some of this other stuff. How hard is that to do? And how many lives would it save?
You know, again, great question, Mr. Representative. I think, again, I tell people all the time, you know, to me, this is a very simple bill in that it just says to set that phone down. You can set it down console next to you, and it's still on speakerphone. It can do everything that you ask it to do by voice activation. Many cars nowadays have a button on the steering wheel that you push that's voice activated. So to me, this is a very simple bill in that it just says when you're in these particular situations in these very particular times, we're just asking that you use your phone, the technology that you have in that phone in a hands-free mode. It's all right there if we just use it.
Other questions for Mr. White? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next proponent is Stephen Durst with Federico Durst Consulting. Welcome to the committee, Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I won't belabor and expand upon the proponents you've heard behind me, but my name is Stephen Durst. On behalf of the Federico Durst Consulting Group and General Motors, I also realize today, sitting in this hearing, I drive from my home in Johnson County 140 miles every day on the turnpike, and I will readily admit, I look down at my phone to look at an email or a text. I am not perfect, and boy, I can absolutely tell that reaction time is delayed when you are looking down here versus up here. And so, again, my tack to my testimony is a little bit different today because I thought about that. I also now have 2 young children. They live in a neighborhood near me, and there are a lot of kids in our neighborhood. You look down at your cell phone, in a split second, a child can be injured. So those are my personal thoughts on that. General Motors, I know, has a vision of 0 crashes. They have been behind this legislation from the start. This is a common sense piece of legislation. I think to Mr. Lowe's point, Mr. White's point, it's narrowly tailored. We have had a lot of meetings, and so I really appreciate their leadership in this topic. I also looked this morning, 33 states have passed some sort of a hands-free law in some form or fashion. So I would just ask today for the committee's consideration. Appreciate your support, and Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Stephen? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next proponent testimony is Bob Eckert. Welcome to the committee, Bob.
Well, Chair Francis and members of the committee, thank you for letting me be here and present this testimony today. I also stand in favor of House Bill 2792, and I understand the need to curtail the use of operating a mobile telephone while driving. This can be a costly distraction for many people. But you're probably wondering, well, why in the world am I, a private citizen here, interested in this legislation? Well, I am here to thank the supporters of this legislation, and you in particular, for a particular exemption that is in this bill. And that exemption is for licensed amateur radio operators to be excluded from this legislation. I am one of those licensed amateur radio operators. Sometimes we are known as ham radio operators. I have just a few things that I think it's important for you to know. It's important to you to know that amateur radio operators begin installing radios in their vehicles in the year 1935. And if you do the math on that, that means that for 90 years, they have been operating radios in vehicles, and they've been doing it safely and responsibly. And as far as I have been able to ascertain, there has never been a vehicle accident in Kansas that was caused by a distracted driver while talking on their radio. I have been a licensed amateur radio operator for 35 years, and I am one of almost 6,000 licensed amateur radio operators across Kansas. And it's important for you to know that we voluntarily support activities and stand ready to take our equipment anywhere the communication is needed, and we have the ability to get it set up and working very quickly. And that may well involve using radios while operating our vehicle. It's also important for you to know that we play vital roles in supporting communications and working with a variety of both government agencies and nonprofit organizations at the local level, and at the state level and at the national level. And we do this always on a voluntary basis. Many amateur radio operators assist local county emergency managers, the Salvation Army, the National Weather Service, just to name a few. And so in conclusion, I would just ask that while enacting this legislation, thank you for remembering what might well be called America's best kept communication secret, and that would be amateur radio. I'll be glad to stand for any questions the committee might have.
Thank you, Bob. Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for your testimony. I'm a ham myself, and as you're talking, I do agree with everything you said, but I just keep thinking about somebody with a code key trying to do CW driving down the road. But I'm sure you wouldn't do that.
Fortunately, most of us don't do that. Most of us don't do CW, which is known as Morse code. We don't do that at all, and especially when we're driving.
Oh, yeah, but back when I got my license, and I'm sure the same with you, that was a requirement. But I don't even remember. Well, it's funny when I hear code now, it starts coming back to me, but I couldn't send anything right now.
We would not be doing that while operating a motor vehicle.
All right, and thanks again for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next proponent testimony we have is Timothy Graham with Kansas NEA. Welcome to the committee, Timothy.
Chairperson Francis, members of the committee, my name is Timothy Graham. I'm the Director of Government Relations and Legislative Affairs for the Kansas National Education Association. We are the largest teachers union in Kansas. If I may, I hope I'm not out of order. I've never been before you guys to testify. I'm glad I was here the day that you guys are hearing 331. Bob Tomlinson was a pretty good guy, and I'm glad I got to hear all that. So back to 2792. I invite you to read the opening portion of my testimony to learn more about who Kansas NEA is. You will see that we support, or we have nearly 22,000 educators in our association. We're organized in more than 265 local associations, and we're serving in every county in the state of Kansas. Our members are your neighbors, your family members, and friends, and the positions we take are debated and adopted through our democratic governance process by educators selected by their peers from across the state. I encourage you to read that in my testimony. When I talk to educators about school safety, nothing is more devastating than the tragedy of losing a student or a colleague. Every morning and every afternoon in Kansas, students are arriving and leaving school through busy traffic environments. And at many schools, particularly in elementary schools, educators volunteer to supervise drop-off and dismissal lines to help keep students safe. House Bill 2792 is a common sense step, and it helps protect those environments by requiring drivers to remain attentive in these school zones. For Kansas educators, this is a clear school safety and workforce issue, and it is a win for students, it's a win for educators, and it's a win for the families of both. So we encourage you to pass 2792, and we thank you for the opportunity to testify.
All right, thank you very much, Tim. Does anybody have any questions for Tim, Representative Wilborn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Mr. Graham. I'm going to ask a kind of a gruesome question. Have you had some fatalities in these walkways any data to?
I don't have any anecdotal instance to tell you about, but obviously every year we lose students, our teachers lose students in various tragedies, and this could be one that we could stop from happening.
Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. I want to draw the committee's attention. We also have written testimony from Ed Klump, and he's got some additional data in there regarding distracted crashes, and Phyllis Larimore. Do we have any other proponent testimony? Seeing none, do we have any opponent testimony? I see none. Do we have any neutral testimony? I don't see any. I'll go ahead and close the hearing on House Bill 2792. Committee, the Tomlinson family is still in the audience, and I would like to have a motion to take emergency final action and work SB 321. Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do move that we suspend the rules for the purpose of work in SB 321.
Is there a second? Second is by Representative Van Houten. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. We're now on SB 321. Are there any amendments?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Hoheisel.
You have a motion, an amendment to insert the contents of SB 366 into SB 321.
Is there a second? Second is by Representative Essex. Chris, could you briefly describe what SB 366 is?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 366, which you heard on February 26, designates a bridge in Sedgwick County on Interstate 135 as the Don Snyder Memorial Bridge.
And if you remember that he was a KDOT engineer, we had good testimony on that. Are there any questions? Any discussion on the amendment? If not, would you like to close on your amendment?
Close and move my amendment.
All right. You've heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Are there any other amendments? If not, is there a motion? Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass out SB 321 favorably as amended.
Is there a second? Second by Representative Essex. Yeah, I'll get you sometime, Casey. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, you may close.
I close.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right. Now, committee, this gets a little touchy. Today's bill is a very important bill. I think the conferees have worked really hard. I want to know if there's any opposition to working House Bill 2792 at this time.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Hoheisel.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion that we suspend the rules to work HB 2792 today.
Is there a second? Second by Representative Van Houten. Casey, you missed a Representative Hoheisel. I guess you didn't want that one, huh? You kind of want the easy stuff, don't you? All right. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, Representative Delperdang.
Just want to verify, we're on 2792, right?
Yeah, the bill we just heard.
It was briefly mentioned by Mr. White out here about a possible amendment of putting the signage there. Has somebody got that?
Yeah, Chair Delperdang, I do have that amendment too.
Just be that way then.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will shut up now. Thank you.
We're trying to make sure the Senate's going to be very happy with this bill, all that we can. No, we don't want to hear from the railroads on this.
We're all out of grease, buddy.
We've got a utility bill that we can talk to the railroads about. All right, now you guys have me a little confused.
So we're on the motion to suspend the rules still and work the bill.
Thank you very much, young man. All right, is there any other discussion on the motion to suspend the rules? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of suspending the rules to work 2792, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. And now we'll start with the amendment.
Chair, I do have an amendment.
Okay, Chris, can you pass out the amendment?
Just one.
We've got two.
Not on this one, just one.
Well, that's right. One on this one and then
One on
one that he talked about on the lighting.
No, we're halfway there. I got it. It's conceptual. It's conceptual, yeah. Yeah, it's
All right. Representative Hoheisel, do you want Chris to explain the amendment or do you want
yeah,
to?
you can.
Chris, can you explain
the amendment Michael White referenced earlier to Chair Delperdang, but yeah, Chris can explain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so the amendment would add in, so again, this isn't, it's kind of part of that definition, but would just be clear for the infraction as well, that workers would have to be present in the road construction zone for the infraction enforcement to apply. And would also add in that signs are posted at the beginning of the road construction zone alerting drivers to the workers being present.
Representative Vaughn, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, is it implied that as a part of that sign that the cell phone ban is in effect? Or is would that be explicit as part of the sign?
Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I'd say is if the sign says the workers are present in the zone, it could say cell phones are banned or not, but the enforcement could apply and people could be ticketed.
I think that's a relatively simple conceptual amendment if you guys want to add it. I don't want to speak for the maker of the amendment. But
yeah, let me.
Representative Delperdang.
Would you be open to a substitute amendment to the amendment? That is a question before I do it.
I think I would be. I mean, what kind of language? I mean, they can do the sign message in the rules and regs if they want. Yeah. They could do that via rules and regs.
Representative Delperdang.
Okay, if I may respond to that, but the signs I seen in Wichita clearly stated construction zone, no cell phone usage. And I think it needs to be called out like the representative over here put.
I do think it's a good point. However, the Senate is going to match this language, and they already have this language that we have here. So if we do it this way, so we can match the Senate's language and do added the sign stuff with KDOT and rules and regs, and they can do it in there and be able to put that onto the sign that way.
Before I ask this, I'm going to remind you who you're sitting next to, but do you trust the Senate to do it?
Well, if we trusted the Senate to do it, I assure you that we would not be here at this very moment having to do what we're doing today.
Okay.
if the Senate would do their job. But I do trust to do this through the rules and regs process. KDOT is here in the room. I trust them to bring this in the rules and regs process.
As long as it gets on, then I'm cool.
Yeah, I do think it's a good point. I think it's a very valid point, but I think the easier path is just matching the Senate's language and then letting KDOT do that through rules and regs.
Michael? So it right now has to have a sign at the beginning that says workers are present. Does it create any problems if we change it to workers are present, no cell phones?
So, good question, Mr. Chairman. I think we could go either way here. I think whatever amendment goes on here, I can work with Chris and, we'll make sure the Senate gets the same language. However, I do think there's a line in here, Chris, that says that rules and regs, KDOT, they would have rules and regs authority probably to do something with the sign. So I think it can probably be done either way. I'm sure KDOT would make sure that it's designed the way that this committee has desired, but, or we would work with that. But I'm good either way. I really am.
I mean, are there any problems if we had no workers present, cell phone usage not allowed? Of course, it does get confusing exactly what is cell phone usage, I think is part of the problem. Yeah, we don't have the other language.
And again, I have no problems if we want to go different. I think the simplest route though is just passing the amendment as is and let them hammer out that language in the rules and regs. They'd have more time to consider what verbiage needs to be on that sign.
Representative Delperding?
No, my thoughts, and this is just thoughts, it's not a motion, but I wouldn't even worry about workers present, but rather entering construction zone, no cell phone usage, and whatever else needs to be on there. It's obvious whether there's workers present or not. I mean, that's kind of a given there.
I think we're starting to get into
But
where the Senate
yeah,
wants
but
one
that's
thing,
just-
only what's-
I think it's a lot clearer to let them hammer it out in rules and regs and get that language fine-tuned right. But I do think you make a great point on that.
And it might even be something we could hammer out in conference if something
Yeah,
came up.
that could be something as well too.
Because we don't know how this stuff's all going to come together. All right, Representative Helgerson.
Take slightly a different view, but mine is somewhat jaded after being in 2 car accidents in the last 2 years and having 2 totaled cars. The construction area during the day, we're going to have workers. At night, we have no workers, but it is actually, generally, it is actually a more dangerous time for drivers who we should also be concerned about, not just the workers, because there is changes in the elevation, changes in the direction of the vehicles and of the lanes. I tend to go with my colleague from Sedgwick County and say, we should have, and even if the Senate doesn't like it, we take this position and say, if it is a construction zone, you should not use your handheld phone because it is dangerous. And you may not want to deal with that in conference, but that is an issue that we should be dealing with either now or in the future.
I don't agree. I think we're trying to take a baby step here. We've tried to take these baby steps sometimes for 3 or 4 years. And I understand your concerns, Representative, but let's try to take the first step.
Yeah, I sympathize with that too. I agree though. Let's get this and let's peel the onion back from there.
All right, we've got an amendment. Did we get a second? Representative Anderson, if we hadn't already, or did you second that one? Okay, Representative Anderson gave the second. Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, committee, I'm going to put this bill aside now that we've done all of this, and I want to bring up SB 366 for final action. If you remember, SB 366 is the Don Snyder Memorial Bridge that the contents were moved into SB 321. And you'll see what we're trying to do here. Representative Hoheisel, do you have an amendment?
So we have 366, I do make a motion to amend. I want to strike the contents of 366 because remember, we've stuck that in the 321. And I want to insert the contents of 2792 with the amendment that we just adopted. And 2792 is the bill we just previously did. So that would be my motion now, is striking the contents of 366 and sticking 2792 with the amendment in.
Is there a second? Second is by Representative Van Houten. Now we'll open it up for discussion. We're creating a shell here, something that they can concur with. Representative Vaughn?
Well, I guess that's my question. So with the amendment language, I mean, there won't be a Senate companion because we're putting it into a shell. So this is where we would want to correct the language if we were going to correct it.
No, they can still non-concur and then we go
You
to
think they'll
conference.
okay.
They can non-concur and we go to conference.
They could concur.
Or they can, they have the option to concur, but they can non-concur and you go to conference as well.
And the concur's pretty, it can go either way.
It can go either
Just wanted to raise that issue. Thanks.
Yep. Any other discussion? If not, would you like to close on your amendment?
Close and move my motion.
All right, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries.
Sure.
Are there any other amendments? Representative Hall Heisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Representative Proctor.
I can wait until after his amendment.
Okay.
Just got a question about the whole bill.
Okay. My next amendment will be inserting the contents of 2522 into SB 366 as amended.
Chris, would you give us an overview real quickly of what 2522 is?
Sir, Mr. Chairman. So Committee House Bill 2522 would allow road and construction vehicles engaged in highway and construction maintenance operations on highways to display either flashing amber and green lights at any time in a road construction zone, and any combination of those two or three lights, white, amber, or green. And then also they could display on stationary trailers engaged in highway construction or maintenance operations to display flashing white and blue lights. And as the bill passed out of the House with amendments from the House Committee of the Whole, flashing white and blue lights can be displayed within the area of a road construction zone when any portion of the roadway is closed, subject to the conditions that the lights are used at night during the hours between sunset and sunrise, and there are workers present in the road construction zone.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to make one tweak to my motion. He referenced the House amendment with the word roadway in it. I would like to strike roadway and put highway in its place.
Okay. And he hasn't made his amendment yet. They wanted it roadway when it came out of the House. I guess they talked to somebody and now they want it highway again. Again, it's, Mr. White continues to work with the stakeholders to make sure the language is in there the way that they want it. Go ahead, Representative Delperdang.
So would that eliminate that particular bill and the usage of the lights if they are working within a city? It's not a highway. Or even like Kellogg, you could argue that it's US 400. It's but it's Kellogg in the city.
Chris, you can address that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So roadway and highway are defined terms in the Uniform Act. Highway basically meaning any public road, street, or state highway that is available or is used for vehicular traffic. It includes the shoulders, includes any portion of that. Roadway only includes the street. So it's just the part for vehicular traffic, does not include the shoulder. So, if you're looking at House Bill 2522, the white and blue lights could be used within the area of a road construction zone when any portion of the highway is closed. So it wouldn't require that the roadway open to vehicular traffic. It could be the shoulder that's closed due to construction. So that would be the.
If I remember correctly, wasn't it the Highway Patrol that asked for the first tweak, and maybe after they thought about it, they really liked the second tweak better?
Okay, and I was just going to ask that if Highway Patrol, their contractors had that been run by them, and if they're in agreement, I'm in agreement.
Yeah.
Is there a second on the amendment?
And highway is just much.
Second by Representative Van Houten. Representative Proctor, you had a question about the process?
I wanted to ask a question about the first bill that we stuck in there. I can wait till after we do this amendment if that would be simpler.
That'd be great. Yeah, Van Houten had the second. All right. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? If not, you may close, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close and move my amendment.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, we're back on the bill. Representative Proctor.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to ask the revisor a question. What is, and if he may have said it at the beginning, but we've had a lot of proponent testimony. What is the fine for violation of the bill on cell phones?
Mr. Chairman, $60.
And then is there a current distracted driving statute? And if so, what's the fine for that?
Mr. Chairman, there's not a current distracted driving per se. There is a current text messaging ban that applies to all areas. That's also $60.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And then there's also a grace period in this. Isn't that correct for, is it a year?
Correct. Warning citations.
Warning
will be
citation
issued
for a year.
this until July 1, 2027.
Okay. Any other conversation? Representative Brunk.
So by combining these two bills, I assume that that grace period and the way that it's written in the language will apply narrowly just to the cell phone portion of the bill. Is that correct? And not apply to both without having the benefit of seeing the language? I'm making that assumption, but I just get a clarification here.
Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, the cell phone part for the infraction would be Section 1. Section 2 would be House Bill 2522. So they operate separately. So the warning provision would just be on the cell phone.
Thank you. Just checking.
Good questions. Other discussion? Other questions? Representative Holheiser?
I was just for a motion whenever you're ready.
Okay. I just want to give everybody a chance to, I know this is kind of a deep breath kind of thing, but we're getting close to the end of the session. All right, Representative Holheiser, do you have a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass out House substitute for Senate Bill 366 favorably as amended.
All right, is there a second? Okay, second by Representative Essex. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, would you like to close on your motion?
I close.
All right, you've heard the motion. All those in favor of passing out substitute for Senate Bill 366 signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, committee, I want to thank you, all of you, for your work this year. You know, we've done a lot this year. We may not meet again. We've got a couple of things hanging out there. We may have to call some meetings real quick, depending upon how things mature through the process. But just thank you for your work. Thank you for being a great committee. And with that, we're adjourned.